Welcome. Today we are taking a really close look at one of the most recognizable objects in the modern world, but one we also, completely overlook.
Hmm.
That small, colorful, slightly sticky square of paper we all know as the Post-it note.
It's a truly remarkable thing, isn't it? I mean, mainly because it's a defining feature. The fact that you can stick it on, pull it off, and stick it on again without leaving any gunk behind, that was never the point. It was
Yeah.
a complete accident.
And that contradiction is exactly what makes this so fascinating. Our exploration today is going to focus entirely on the source material we have that details the pretty surprising history of this product.
Yeah.
We're going to trace its accidental creation, the very clever commercial strategy that made it, well, ubiquitous, and its huge influence across so many fields, professional, educational, even art.
And our goal here is to really get a thorough understanding of this everyday object. We want to see how a simple piece of paper with a strip of what they call low-tack, pressure-sensitive adhesive,
Yeah.
how that went from a lab mistake to an essential multi-billion-dollar global tool.
And that unique strip of adhesive, that's the core of it all, isn't it? The chemical compound that changed everything.
It is.
And while the original 3M patent that protected that formula expired back in 1997, it's really important to note the legal side of things here.
Oh, absolutely.
The name Post-it itself and that very distinctive canary yellow color, those remain fiercely protected trademarks.
Exactly. And that's why if you go to a store and look at the competitors, they're legally blocked. They have to use these really generic terms, like repositionable notes or sticky pads.
Right.
The power of that brand identity, Post-it, is one of the key things 3M is still defending, decades later.
Okay, let's unpack this journey. It's really a classic story of a scientific failure that eventually leads to this massive unforeseen success. This is our first part, the serendipitous invention and the birth of a brand.
Indeed. To start, we have to go all the way back to 1968. We're inside the labs of 3M, the manufacturing giant known for, all its adhesives and innovative materials. And we meet a scientist named Spencer Silver. His goal was, well, it was ambitious, but pretty straightforward. He was trying to create a super strong adhesive.
So it's something permanent.
Exactly. Something that would bond materials together forever, maybe for aerospace applications or heavy construction.
So he was aiming for the ultimate superglue. But instead of creating something that bonded super aggressively, he accidentally created what the source material calls a low-tack, reusable, pressure-sensitive adhesive.
Right. It stuck to things, but only lightly. And the crucial part was you could pull it apart without tearing the paper or the surface it was on.
So what was happening on a microscopic level? Why did it work that way?
Well, the technical explanation is pretty fascinating. His compound wasn't a smooth layer of strong glue. Instead, it was made up of millions of microscopic, non-adhering polymer spheres.
So like tiny little ball.
Think of them exactly like that. Tiny, perfectly formed balls that kind of dimpled the surface of the paper. When you applied it, these microspheres created a weak but repeatable bond. It was more of a mechanical stickiness, almost like a temporary suction cup effect, rather than a deep chemical bond.
Wait, so for a company like 3M, which was already a huge leader in industrial adhesives, creating a glue that, well, that failed to stick permanently must have been seen as a complete flop.
It absolutely was. It was a technological dead end in their eyes. It was so unlike anything 3M normally dealt with that Silver spent 5 long, frustrating years promoting his invention inside the company.
5 years.
5 years. He was desperately trying to convince people it had potential, calling it a solution without a problem. He'd host seminars, informal chats, demonstrations, just trying to convince his colleagues that this weird temporary glue had a purpose.
And no one was biting.
No adherence, no budget. It was just this strange thing he had created.
That must have been incredibly frustrating for him. Having this unique chemical compound, knowing its properties are special, but just not finding the right application. And that turning point, the problem that the solution was waiting for, that came 6 years later, in 1974.
Yes, and that's when Arthur Fry enters the picture. Fry was a colleague of Silver's, a product developer, and he had actually attended one of those early, seemingly unsuccessful seminars.
So the idea had been planted.
It had. And Fry's problem was wonderfully mundane, which I think shows that the biggest breakthroughs often solve the smallest, most relatable inconveniences.
What was the problem?
Fry was a singer in his church choir. And the little pieces of paper he used as bookmarks in his hymnal, they kept slipping out when he'd open the book to the right page.
Oh, I can picture that. A constant little annoyance.
Exactly, just disrupting his focus during rehearsals. And then he had his light bulb moment.
And here's where the real innovation happens, right? Not in the lab, but in the application. Fry suddenly realized that silver's low-tack, temporary adhesive was the perfect thing to anchor his bookmark.
It would hold the page securely enough so it wouldn't slip, but he could still easily move it to the next week's hymn without, ripping the delicate paper of the book.
And from there, he saw the bigger picture.
He did. That functional concept immediately clicked for him, and he saw the potential for a whole new kind of communication tool. And what's really fascinating about 3M's corporate culture at the time is how they sort of nurtured this kind of thing.
This is the permitted bootlegging policy, right?
Exactly. Fry took advantage of 3M's sanctioned permitted bootlegging policy.
That's such a great phrase. Can you explain what that policy actually allowed? Why was it so important for the Post-it notes development?
Sure, it was an internal policy that basically allowed engineers and employees to dedicate a percentage of their work hours, often around 15%, to their own projects.
Even if they weren't officially assigned.
Even if those projects fell completely outside their official tasks. It was a mechanism for internal innovation. It acknowledged that, the best ideas often come from curiosity and unstructured time, not just top-down assignments.
So Fry used this time to develop the concept.
He did. He used it to fully develop and prototype the Post-it note idea.
So you've got an accidental chemical creation,
Yeah.
a failure to make superglue meeting an accidental application in a church choir, all fostered by this really progressive internal innovation policy. That's a wonderful collision of chance and strategy.
It truly is. But we also have to talk about the product's look. The famous aesthetic.
The canary yellow.
The canary yellow. The sources really highlight this story. You'd probably assume that color was chosen after, tons of market research for high visibility or maybe to evoke some kind of psychological response.
But the real story is much more random.
And much more fun. The sources tell us the color was chosen completely by chance. It came from scrap paper that was just available on hand at the lab right next door to the Post-it team when Fry and Silver started developing the actual sheets.
So you just needed paper, and that was the color of the scrap pile.
Yellow scrap was what they grabbed. A simple convenience ended up defining the global branding for decades to come.
Incredible. So once Fry had these yellow prototypes, what did he do?
He distributed them widely to employees at 3M. This was basically the ultimate internal test market, and the results were immediate.
They just started using them.
Instantly, 3M employees began using the notes not just as bookmarks, but to exchange messages, to organize their tasks. It proved their utility as a low-friction communication tool right there in a professional setting. They were an immediate hit.
But that internal excitement didn't quite translate to the outside world, at least not at first.
No. They learned a pretty harsh lesson in 1977. 3M tried to test market the product in 4 cities under the name Press and Peel.
Press and peel. It's descriptive, but not very catchy.
Not at all. And those sales were deeply disappointing. This first attempt at commercialization was a failure because, as the sources suggest, consumers just didn't get it.
They didn't understand the value proposition.
Exactly. In a world of permanent glue and tape, a temporary, low-adhesion note seemed kind of pointless. If you couldn't physically hold it, pull it off, and stick it somewhere else, the utility just wasn't self-evident on a store shelf.
So this forced a complete rethink. 3M realized they had a unique product that just defied traditional marketing. And this led to the pivotal moment we call the Boise Blitz.
This was the crucial 1978 marketing campaign. First, they rebranded the product to the much catchier and more functional Post-it note.
Much better.
But the real genius was the shift in the sales approach. Instead of trying to sell the product, they decided to just give it away.
The free sample strategy.
A massive one. They saturated offices all over Boise, Idaho, with huge quantities of free samples.
So they put the note directly into people's hands. They let them discover how to use it organically, stick it on a monitor, move it to a file, pass a message to a colleague.
And the results of this campaign were, well, they were dramatic. It's a marketing success story for the agent.
What did the data show?
The data confirmed it all. The source material says that over 90% of the people who got the free samples said they would buy the product.
Wow.
Once they had been introduced to it and actually experienced that unique repositionable feature, they were sold. This campaign didn't just sell a product, it proved a concept. The sticky note had to be experienced for its value to be understood.
So the Boise Blitz created the blueprint.
Yeah.
It proved the Post-it note was a product that essentially created its own demand once you got it into people's hands.
It did. And following that success, the product launched across the entire United States in 1980. The launch continued really quickly after that, expanding into Canada and Europe the very next year, in 1981, securing its path to global ubiquity.
And just to close the loop on the intellectual property timeline, while Silver created the adhesive,
Right.
Arthur Fry was granted the patent for the specific repositionable sheet material concept in 1993. He described it as a repositionable, pressure-sensitive adhesive sheet material.
So it was a nearly 30-year journey from that initial chemical accident to full market and legal maturation.
Moving into our second part, we can see how 3M didn't just, sit back and relax with the original yellow square note. They relentlessly expanded the product line.
Adapting it for all these diverse user needs and new environments. And of course, they had to deal with the intense legal challenges that, always come with a breakout invention.
Where did the expansion start?
It started almost immediately after that successful launch. The first key innovation was the introduction of Post-it flags.
Right, the little thin ones.
Exactly. They were much smaller than the original notes and were designed specifically for organizational uses. Color coding, indexing, filing documents without covering up the text or damaging the paper.
They were an immediate hit with students and lawyers, I'd imagine.
A huge hit. Then, in 1995, we saw the launch of Post-it easel pads, and a kids' version followed in 1996.
So this is a strategic move. 3M understood that the low-tack technology wasn't just for desktop messages, it was scalable.
They were moving the notes off the desk and onto the wall, really facilitating large-scale brainstorming and display in conference rooms and classrooms.
And that strategic push into these collaborative environments, that must have required an upgrade to the actual adhesive.
It did. It necessitated a major upgrade. This came in 2003 with the introduction of Post-it brand super sticky notes.
Super sticky.
And the need for this stronger product came directly from user feedback. The original low-tack adhesive, it struggled to stick securely to common vertical or non-smooth surfaces.
Like computer monitors.
Computer monitors, textured paint, fabric cubicle walls, it would just fall off.
The super sticky notes had a stronger formula that still had that essential repositionability, but, provided greater security on those vertical surfaces. It effectively expanded the product's functional real estate from just the desk to the entire room.
And they didn't stop at the office. In 2018, 3M launched Post-it Extreme Notes. What's truly fascinating here is the focus on environments far outside the typical office setting.
So where were these designed for?
These notes are specifically engineered to be durable, water-resistant, and designed to stick firmly to industrial materials like wood, cinder blocks, or metal surfaces.
Places you'd find on a construction site or in a factory.
Exactly. This shows a profound shift in thinking, taking a product designed for paper-to-paper communication and adapting it for industrial labeling in harsh outdoor settings. They realized the need for temporary, non-destructive labeling is just everywhere.
And at the same time, 3M was wisely embracing the digital world.
They had to. They relaunched the Post-it app in 2019, recognizing that modern work increasingly jumps between the physical and digital spaces.
So what does the app do?
It allows you to quickly digitize your physical Post-it notes using your phone's camera. You can then organize them, share them digitally. It bridges that physical-digital gap pretty seamlessly.
And the innovation is still going, even with all the recent shifts in how people work. The source material highlights things from 2020 and 2021, like the Post-it Flex Right surface.
Which is a very intriguing concept. They basically combined the repositionable element with a whiteboard functionality.
So it's a portable whiteboard.
It's a whiteboard surface you can write on with both standard dry erase markers and permanent markers.
Wait, permanent markers? How do you clean it?
That's the amazing part. The permanent ink can be easily cleaned off later with just soap and water. It's 3M's very sophisticated answer to that challenge of permanence versus flexibility in intense brainstorming sessions.
And in 2021, they launched Noted by Post-it brand.
Yes, a more aesthetic collection really focused on premium paper goods and desktop applications, and it came along with a refresh of the company logo.
It's so clear that while that canary yellow is still the icon, the sheer variety of the product now is just staggering. It's designed for market segmentation, based on both function and, personal aesthetic choice.
The numbers really drive that home. According to the source material, there are at least 28 documented colors available.
And these aren't just like red, blue, green.
No. They're carefully chosen hues with these marketing names like Candy Apple Red, Fresh Mint, Iris Infusion, Vital Orange. This is strategic.
The focus shifted from pure utility to emotional consumer choice.
It goes deeper than just color. There are 11 thematic collections available, things like B-Side Cafe, Oasis, Supernova Neons, and Wanderlust Pastels.
So by providing notes tied to a specific mood or aesthetic, 3M justifies its brand premium and makes sure that consumers are always picking an official Post-it for their personal organization.
And the dimensions also show that extreme variation. It goes far beyond the familiar 3x3-inch square.
What's the range?
Sizes go from tiny specialized notes at about 1 38 inches by 1 78 inches, perfect for narrow margin notes, all the way up to huge collaborative sheets that are 11 inches by 11 inches.
So whether you're indexing a book or mapping a huge project on a wall, there's an exact size for the job.
We should also mention the availability of greener Post-it notes.
Right, a response to growing environmental consciousness.
These notes are made with recycled paper, so no new trees are used, and they feature a pretty substantial 67% plant-based adhesive.
That kind of comprehensive variety, combined with its cultural penetration, is exactly why the Post-it note has gotten so much formal recognition, and also why its history has been so aggressively disputed.
The recognition is clear. The original product received the internal 3M Golden Step Award in '81 and '82, and the Outstanding New Product Award in 1981.
All acknowledging its rapid success and impact.
And most notably, in 2010, the two key figures, Spencer Silver and Arthur Fry, were jointly inducted into the National Inventors Hall of Fame.
It's also recognized as a design icon, right?
Yes, the Post-it note is in the prestigious Architecture and Design collection of the Museum of Modern Art, and it was slated for a 2025 exhibition called Pirouette: Turning Points in Design.
But where there's that kind of global success, there are always, as you said, sticky disputes. 3M has had to fiercely defend its ownership and invention claims.
Especially given how simple the product seems, the primary competing claim came from a man named Alan Amron.
Right. Amron claimed he was the true inventor.
He asserted that he invented the note concept in 1973 and then disclosed the technology to 3M in 1974. His 1997 lawsuit against 3M, it eventually resulted in a confidential settlement.
Which suggests 3M just wanted to resolve it quickly and quietly?
It seems so. However, the issue came back up years later, which really shows the high stakes involved. In 2016, Amron launched another suit against 3M, this time seeking a staggering $400 million in damages.
And his claim was that 3M was wrongly promoting the story centered on Silver and Fry.
Exactly. But ultimately, that suit was dismissed, and the courts upheld the terms of that original confidential settlement. This whole series of events just underscores 3M's unwavering commitment to defending the documented history that they have.
And it wasn't just individual claims. 3M has also fiercely protected the Post-it trademark from becoming, what's the legal term?
Genericide.
Genericide. The legal death of a brand name when it becomes a common descriptive term like aspirin or zipper.
And if Post-it became generic, 3M would lose its ability to differentiate its premium product from all the knockoffs.
The source material shows this defense strategy very clearly. In 1997, 3M sued Microsoft.
The tech giant.
The issue wasn't that Microsoft created an electronic sticky note in Office 97. That was fine. The issue is that Microsoft used the term Post-it in a help file, treating it like a common noun instead of a protected brand.
And that was a clear signal from 3M. They would legally challenge any use that treated their trademark as just interchangeable with the general idea of a sticky note.
And they've been successful.
Largely, yes. The legal history confirms it. No legal authority has ever considered Post-it to be a generic trademark, despite, how common it is for us to use it in conversation to mean any sticky note.
Okay, as we move into our third part, let's step away from the lab and the courtroom and look at the Post-it note in the wild. Its surprising and sometimes profound applications in life, media, and society. This is where its versatility really shines.
And it really begins with its foundational use in professional settings and in the classroom, where it's just this incredibly low-friction tool for collaboration.
In professional settings, especially in things like innovation and design, Post-it notes are vital.
Oh, absolutely. Design teams use them extensively for group activities like brainstorming, which is a key part of the methodology known as design thinking.
So they allow participants to quickly jot down individual thoughts, stick them on a shared wall, and then you can reorganize them instantly, visually see patterns.
Right. And that process of rapid iteration and the physical movement of ideas helps teams move quickly towards, actionable outcomes. And because the notes are sort of anonymous and temporary, they really democratize the idea-sharing process.
How so?
Well, a junior team member is just as likely to have their note moved to the high-priority column as someone from senior management. They literally boost communication between colleagues by making ideas tangible.
And beyond just conveying information, they have a social function in the workplace, right?
Mm-hmm.
Offering praise or quick positive feedback or words of encouragement.
It's a low-friction physical way to communicate immediate personalized feedback without sending a formal email that might feel like too much.
When we turn to education, the advantages are just enormous.
Especially when technology isn't feasible or, even desired. The source material points out that they're incredibly cost-efficient, they require zero setup time, and they're simple enough for students of almost any age to use.
From elementary school, arts and crafts, all the way up to university-level engineering.
And they allow for some advanced learning techniques without expensive materials. They're used in concept mapping, where students can visually link related ideas on a board, or for labeling physical models.
For older students, they offer a really key alternative to just traditional note-taking.
Yes, students can use them to annotate textbooks instead of highlighting or writing in the margins. This helps visually guide them to key points without permanently marking up the book.
Which is critical for students using shared or rented textbooks.
Absolutely. And in team exercises, they're perfect for creating graphic organizers. For example, the fishbone diagram, also called an Ishikawa diagram, is a common problem-solving tool.
Right, for sorting causes and effects.
And since each student can contribute one idea on a separate post-it, it makes collaboration easy, flexible, and visually democratic. You can move the bones of the diagram around quickly to refine the whole analysis.
Now let's get into one of the most interesting findings from the research material, which shows the note's surprising power of persuasion.
This is truly fascinating behavioral research. It's a 2005 study by Randy Garner, and it demonstrated the Post-it note's psychological effect on compliance and human interaction.
What did he do in the study?
Garner wanted to test compliance rates, so he sent out surveys under 3 different conditions. One group got a survey with no note attached.
Okay.
The second group got a survey with a handwritten personalized note on a Post-it asking them to please complete it. And the third group, this is the most interesting part, they received a survey with a completely blank Post-it note stuck to the cover.
A blank note. What did that study find?
The results were striking. The surveys that had any Post-it note attached were significantly more likely to be completed and returned than those without one.
Even the blank one.
Even the blank one. And what's more, the participants who received a note, even the blank one, were also more likely to write higher quality, more detailed responses to the questions.
But just attaching a sticky square, even with zero information on it, somehow signals a human connection or personal attention that increases compliance and effort.
Exactly. It translates this mass-produced product back into a personalized communication touchpoint. The receiver unconsciously feels this little obligation to respond because the note implies human effort and attention went into it.
It creates a sticky influence, literally.
It does. And this power of the note to carry significant weight, sometimes way out of proportion to its size, is reflected so often in pop culture.
Right, where it's used as a narrative device to convey these emotional extremes. The Post-it note has been a recurring prop in all sorts of shows and films. It signals everything from organization like in The Office or Parks and Recreation to complex tech planning in a movie like Ex Machina.
But 2 specific TV references really stand out for their profound emotional weight. They show the extreme ends of the relationship spectrum.
The first, from the medical drama Grey's Anatomy, turned the note into this unexpected symbol of, well, profound and lasting commitment.
The characters Meredith Grey and Derek Shepherd, they famously use a blue Post-it note to hastily write down their wedding vows. It solidifies their relationship in this highly emotional, non-traditional, and now, iconic pop culture moment.
It suggested that the commitment itself was what mattered, more than the formal piece of paper.
Exactly. And then the other memorable example from season 6 of Sex and the City shows the much darker, more abrupt side of the note's use in relationships.
This is the famous breakup note.
It is. The character Carrie Bradshaw receives a breakup message left by her boyfriend Berger on a Post-it note. It just said, "I'm sorry, I can't. Don't hate me."
It was just so stark, impersonal, a cowardly method of communication.
It was. It leveraged the note's temporary, low-effort nature for a major life event. And it's impossible not to feel this intense sympathy for the character receiving that message.
It just highlights the cruelty of it, the finality of using such a casual delivery method for something so significant and painful.
And that contrast, from being a symbol of lifelong commitment to being a tool for abrupt, disrespectful termination, It perfectly underscores the note's versatility as an emotional register in media.
Its simplicity allows it to be filled with immense meaning, both positive and negative.
And beyond its role in personal drama, the Post-it note has evolved into a full-fledged artistic medium and a potent platform for public engagement and commentary.
We see professional artists using it, despite its humble origins. The sources confirm that an artist named R.B. Kitaj did a piece directly on a Post-it note that sold for £640 at auction.
Which makes it the most valuable piece of stationery ever recorded. The medium, however humble, doesn't limit the value of the art itself.
And the size limitations don't stop the ambition either. We have examples of these large-scale installation and mosaic art pieces.
In 2011, Apple fans at a store in Munich created this really impressive portrait of Steve Jobs using 4,001 individual notes. They were basically using each note as a temporary colored pixel in a huge mural.
It's like low-resolution, accessible, collaborative pixel art.
Exactly. And another large-scale example comes from a California artist, Rebecca Murtaugh. In 2001, she created an installation by covering her entire bedroom with $1,000 worth of notes.
And she used the colors to mean something.
She did. She used the original yellow for objects she considered less valuable, and then she used neon colors for more important items, like her bed. She created this temporary, sticky, color-coded map and commentary on her own domestic space.
And there are even examples of miniature private journals.
Yes, Rosa Maria Arenas created the yellow sticky diary of a mad secretary. It was a mini graphic journal she created secretly on the notes during various temp jobs she had between 1994 and 2005.
So these were like tiny canvases.
Over 2,000 original drawings on these tiny canvases. A small percentage were later exhibited, and they provide this little window into the hidden internal life of worker.
So moving from individual art to large-scale community expression, the Post-it note has unexpectedly become this powerful tool for public commentary, even a form of democratic expression.
The most poignant and high-profile example of this is the phenomenon known as subway therapy.
Right, this collaborative art project started the day after the 2016 U.S. presidential election. An artist named Matthew Levy Chavez started it in Union Square Station in New York City.
He simply invited commuters who were just reeling from the emotional intensity of that political moment to express their hopes and fears and frustrations on Post-it notes, and then they'd stick them to the subway walls.
And the response was immediate.
Immediate and overwhelming. Commuters contributed over 50,000 notes during the project's short run. It transformed a transit hub into this massive, anonymous, spontaneous canvas of public feeling. The sheer volume created this intense visual representation of the city's collective emotional state.
That's just extraordinary. An instantaneous, temporary act of public expression being elevated to archival status.
It was. When the project was eventually taken down, the New York Historical Society recognized the value of the notes as contemporary public sentiment. They preserved several thousand of them.
So the notes essentially became a spontaneous, anonymous record of history.
They did. And they're also used systematically in things like urban planning. Sidewalk Labs, the Google-owned company, used the notes heavily in their public workspace in Toronto.
How did they use them?
When presenting city planning concepts, the public was invited to share ideas, opinions, and feedback directly on the plans, often in the form of Post-it note annotations. It allowed for real-time, hands-on public feedback.
And finally, their simplicity makes them perfect for museum interactivity.
Turning passive visitors into active participants. At the Minnesota History Center in 2017, for instance, the public wrote reflections on the life and legacy of the musician Prince on Post-it notes and posted them near an exhibit dedicated to him.
And the museum even archived some of those notes.
They did, to preserve the public reflections that were expressed at that time.
So we've traced the evolution of the Post-it note from an accidental chemical compound, a failure to create superglue to an indispensable organizational tool, and a sophisticated platform for art and democratic commentary. It's really transcended its humble stationary origins.
And its legacy persists, even in the virtual world. The concept of the temporary, easily movable note is now fully integrated into modern software.
Right. This includes 3M's own Post-it brand software notes, as well as native tools like Stickies in macOS and Sticky Notes in Windows. It proves the physical logic of the note just translates perfectly to digital organization.
It's remarkable to reflect on the whole journey. From Spencer Silver's initial, frustrating search for a superglue, to Arthur Fry's choir bookmark solution, to the calculated high-stakes marketing of the Boise Blitz, the item has just become so much more than its origin story.
It's a foundational, universal platform for temporary ideas, for organization, emotional expression, even democratic dialogue.
And the source material confirms that 3M fiercely protects its trademark against the threat of it becoming a generic term. They fight hard in courts around the world to ensure that Post-it remains a registered brand name, protecting their multi-billion-dollar asset. Yet, its omnipresence in media, public life, and software suggests that, culturally, the Post-it note is far more than just a brand. It's a universal concept, a cultural fixture that has achieved a kind of functional genericity despite the best legal efforts of its corporate owner.
So the true significance might be found in that tension.
I think so. The difference between what a product is legally and what it has become in the global culture.
That tension is certainly something worth mulling over. Thanks for listening.